Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, with this shaven face, because I did it recently and he felt he was left out, even though we both look much better with beards. I don't know what's going on. We talk about horror movies on this show, and in this episode, we're actually going to talk about something that we know we like, because we've been doing so many new movies, and so many of them have been disappointing to downright terrible, that we're like, oh, we've not made enough time for actual classics or for, you know, movies that we really love and want to talk about and that kind of thing. So we settled on Let the Right One In, which admittedly is not that old, although it's 8 years now, which is making me feel a little bit old. Actually, not 8 years, yeah. So, yeah, Let the Right One In, of course, is a vampire movie from Sweden. It is based on a book. It was remade into Let Me In a few years later in the US. But yeah, we will start spoiler free, and we will get into spoilers about halfway through. We will warn you before we do so, as always. So, no, let's talk about Let the Right One In. This is maybe a silly question, given everything I just said, but Tim, do you like Let the Right One In?
You bet your sweet ass I did. I'll say this is a goddamn masterpiece. I freaking love this movie.
Oh, we're starting with the big words, big bold claims. We're starting with. I love it as well. It's one that I loved as soon as I saw it back when it came out. I mean, it might have been a year after it came out, because obviously sometimes foreign movies take an extra little bit of time to make their way over. But yeah, back when it was first doing the rounds, I loved it. And I don't think I'd seen it actually since Let Me In came out.
Yeah, me neither. I think this is one of the reasons why I was excited to revisit it. Even though, you know, I really, really like it. It's one of the ones I haven't watched in at least a few years.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a heavier watch, because it is got a nice sort of slow pace. It's arguably just as much of a sort of drama as it is a horror movie. And it's I think it's one of the best horror movies of the last like decade or so. It might be my favorite vampire movie.
I was just gonna say that as well. Yeah, at least if not the best vampire movie, probably, or no, I'd say like easily top 3 at least.
Yeah. And that was actually one of the reasons why we picked this, is because we were sort of looking at everything we'd done over the past 120 odd episodes, and went, we've only done like one vampire movie. That's really weird. We've also only done 2 zombie movies and 2 werewolf movies, so it was between all those sort of subgenres. We're like, all right, we need to do one of these and start building up some of that catalogue of these. But we settled on vampire. We settled on this.
I did have a quick question. I did want to see where you stand with vampires in general, if you have an affinity towards them. Like, when it comes to supernatural stuff, are they on the top of your list, or are you usually kind of like meh?
That's interesting. Interesting question. I think vampires are very diverse, and there's certain types of vampires that I really like, and there's certain types that I really hate. It's probably not going to be surprising to say that the kinds that I really hate are the Twilight-esque.
Right.
Even True Blood, I despise that show.
Any kind of like romanticized version?
For the most
like
part, I think obviously the romanticized stuff comes back from Dracula, where there is a little bit of that element in there where he kind of seduces the victims. And I'm okay with that. Like, obviously, I like Dracula. And that said, though, my favourite version of Dracula is Nosferatu, specifically the Herzog version, which is more monstrous and more sinister. And when you make a vampire proper, like, scary like that, I like it. Obviously, Let the Right One In is kind of a funny example, because it is kind of leaning in towards the romance of it, but it's very different. It's not about... I mean, it is a love story, but it's not the romantic, like... sexy love story. I mean, well, it can't be sexy. They're 12-year-olds. So it'd be weird if it was sexy.
I also don't think it's any the kind of love story that people would aspire to. Like, it's not like anyone like, oh, I wish I had someone that looked at me the way like Ellie looks at Oscar or something like.
It's a dark love story. It's a love story about broken individuals finding someone who is equally broken to an extent.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So it's got a really sort of dark twist to it, and that's what I like about it. Vampires can be great. There's something to be said about creatures of the night who feed off blood, who literally feed off human beings. It kind of works. Admittedly, if I'm ranking them, I mean, I might put zombies higher in terms of just. I don't know. I feel like zombies are easier to get right, even though it feels like recently they've not been doing that. I definitely put them above werewolves, though.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I like vampires more than werewolves. Not that I dislike werewolves, of course. There's some good werewolf movies. What else am I thinking? I mean, I don't know if you bring ghosts into it. I feel like vampires, werewolves, and zombies are all undead, or at least feel like that to me. Whereas stuff like supernatural ghosts and stuff feel like a separate entity.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I like them as well, and then I do feel like, similar to the problem I have with modern zombies, I feel like there's a certain type of modern vampire I don't like, which is, like similar in the way where like you have the zombies that are very loud and have that kind of like primal scream and are running real fast. I feel like there's a similar version of vampires like that, and I like that in this movie it actually takes like a very grounded approach. Like
it is the Unbreakable of vampire movies.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. But yeah, like there's never any point where she's like goes full vampire and like has like these huge fangs. And
fun enough is actually one of my, because I actually think Let Me In's a pretty decent good movie. I mean, admittedly, I'm probably never going to watch it again because I'd rather just watch this one because I think it's superior.
Yeah.
But one of the complaints I would have about Let Me In, despite being very good, is that they did this weird CG thing where she moves really fast and like jumps around.
Yeah.
And watching this one again and seeing how she moves and how it's much more natural, even when she is doing some stuff that is kind of more supernatural vampire-esque, like climbing up the side of a building, it feels more simple and more just what it is.
It's so subtle, and like I feel like in American, like a lot of times the American versions of stuff like this, it's so like, hey, look at this, look at what's going on. Well, it has scenes like that where it's just like, yeah, we're just gonna show this in the background, and if you catch it, awesome.
Yeah.
Like we don't really care if you don't notice it. And I think that is so cool and so like real world. Like that's how something would happen. You would just see it like that.
Yeah, it was the beauty of it. You give that impression, but at the same time, as a director, you're making sure you notice it. It's a really subtle art.
Yeah.
It's really, but it feels that way, and that's the beauty of it. It feels like you could have almost missed that, but you never would have, because they frame it in such a way, they make sure you're going to catch it as it's moving. But I think another vampire movie that I love that we'll probably do at some point is and it's also foreign. I think this is really interesting that all my favorite vampire stuff in the last like decade are all non-US, but A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Are you going to guess?
Well, I was going to ask you to say the country and then see if I could guess it.
Oh, right, okay.
That's a very good movie, though.
To be fair, when I said Iran, you probably would have jumped straight to that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not many Iranian vampire movies, but that's all real good, and that does bring in the romance kind of aspect. But what it does, I think, the way to do it right, and this is the way that Dracula feels when it's done right, is that it's more hypnotic. It's like a trance. It's like you're under their spell. You're drawn to them, and I think that movie does that really well. This one kind of hits that note. I wouldn't say it's full on trance-like, but there's definitely this connection, because obviously the movie's again more grounded. It's more about, and the title says it all. It's called Let the Right One In. It's about finding the right person to bond with, from Eli's perspective, of someone to look after her, and be. It's almost like she's looking for her. What's the character's name from Dracula? The one, the servant that he sort of mind controls.
Renfield.
Renfield, yeah. It's almost like a more real world take in that. Not mind controlled, not anything like that, but just it's about finding the person who's going to be there for you, kind of thing. Especially in her case, because she's a vampire who's like 12 and can't necessarily, just walk into a place and do something at 12, especially when she can only go out at night. So.
I found out some interesting tidbits because, like you said, this is based on a novel. And after I was done watching it, I actually looked at the Wikipedia page for some stuff about the author and the original novel. And they had some stuff in there that I'll go into in the spoiler section, but made me kind of rethink some of like the character relationships and stuff in the movie. But
that's actually, I think when we get to spoilers, I want to talk about some of the differences between this and the remake, and how it shows some of the character stuff, because I think this one again is more subtle, and there's some stuff in the remake where they just have to make it really obvious, like they have to spell out a couple of things that I think devalues it a little bit. But now let's talk about let's actually get to talking about the movie as like the movie. In terms of spoiler free, I'll just say it's wonderfully paced. It's very, like I say, hypnotic. The direction's very laid back, likes to go for a wide shot. A lot of snow gives it a really nice cold kind of atmosphere, which I know sounds obvious. It's obvious because it's snow, but like it does give it this feel. It gives it this. It's set in the 80s, but it never beats you over the head that it's the 80s. I think other than the fact that no one's got a mobile phone or a cell phone, it's basically just there's a Rubik's cube in a scene, and like that's basically it. That's just your. That's what it says. It's the 80s for the most part. But I think it's wonderfully paced. I think, despite the fact that it is kind of a horrific story when you really think about it, there is a genuine sweetness to it, which is something that I think this one does better than the remake as well. Is there's a genuine kind of like, as much as you know it's not the right thing, there's kind of a hope. You can't. There's points when you kind of want them to get together in a really weird way, where you really care about them connecting with each other.
Well, I would 100% say that like Oscar and Ellie are like the heroes of the movie. Like they're the ones that you root for.
Yeah, they are. And I think there is a horrific side to it when you really think about it. But there was a detail that I'd forgotten about when I watched, because it's been so long that and I'd had Let Me In my head, and I couldn't remember maybe what details belonged to which, and I'd forgotten about a detail that actually made it a bit more of a oddly sweet story from their perspective. But yeah, so that's it. I think I don't think I really want to say anything else without going into spoilers, to be honest. I want to talk about details. I want to talk about stuff.
I feel like it's an older movie. Like if you hadn't seen it by now, you really should do yourself the favor. And I mean, suffice it to say, we both absolutely adore it. So I think it's safe to go into spoilers at this point.
Okay, full spoilers then for Let the Right One In. So the detail I was talking about that I'd forgotten, because I'm pretty sure this isn't in the Let Me In, but again, it's actually been, like, I seen that when it came out in the theaters, so I mean, again, I could be misremembering this, but I think it wasn't in the remake, is that he's already a bit of a, like, proper weirdo. Like, he keeps newspaper clippings of, like, murders stories from the newspaper, and he, like...
You mean Oscar?
What did I say?
Right. You said Eli.
Did I say Eli? Sorry, yeah, I meant Oscar. Yeah. He stands there topless looking at the window like he's an American Psycho, and he's obsessed with murder stories, and he's got a knife, and he's a proper, like, serial killer in the training. Like, he already feels like he's going to go down a dark path. But so the fact that he finds Eli, because obviously we see he gets bullied a lot at school. A big part of this movie is him being bullied by this little asshole and his two like henchmen. And that's a big thing. But not only that, you get this impression that Oscar, because his parents are split up, because there's scenes with his mother where his mother just seems like she's never there. When she is there, she looks like she's dressed to go to work, and she's just pissed at him for getting into trouble at school or whatever. And then when he does go to see his dad, the first time he goes to see his dad, it seems very happy. Like, oh, maybe the movie's hitting at points where he's not got a father figure in his life. It's bad. But then later on when he goes to see his dad, like, his dad's friend comes over, and he gets ignored to the point where he actually hitchhikes back home.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was weird how we never get a scene with his mother, like, questioning, how did you get home? But he gets back home, like, to the point where he's just ignored, and you get this sense that even at home he is ignored, he's empty, he's lonely, and he doesn't get this thing. And obviously there is that small scene where his mother's watching TV and she wants him to watch with her, so maybe she is reaching out, but she doesn't understand her son. She doesn't understand what kind of, like, relationship he needs. So that's the whole idea that when Eli shows up and he has this connection, and it's a weird connection because we see that she's got this old guy named Hakan. There's a little, like, Swedish, like, umlaut, or not an umlaut, that's what you call it in German, but there's like a little symbol above the A, there's a little accent, and I don't know what that does to the letter to pronounce it, so I'm just going to say Hakan. But, like, he's like her human who goes out and like kills people and drains their blood for her, and he's really shit at it as well. Like he tries it twice in this movie. The first time he's in the woods, he hangs the guy upside down and he's draining the blood, and this dog finds him and he has to like abandon it, and he forgets to pick up the jar of blood, which it really annoyed me because I was like, just take the blood. You still need the blood for her.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to her going out and having to kill someone in the traditional vampire sense.
Yeah.
But so the idea that she needs someone like that to replace him and Eli is really fascinating, but it really makes sense given the path that he was already on. He already seemed like he was going down a path of like darkness and killing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So,
He's already like started the weirdo serial killer recipe of like, you know, childhood trauma and being ignored and left alone and stuff. That, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, maybe he wouldn't do something as dark as that, but you know, you do see how he could fit in with, you know, her.
Yeah, so he's already like primed to maybe go down that path, and I think it does add this weird sweetness to it though, that these two misfits have found each other. Like she can't have like regular friends, and one of the subtle points that I love is that when Hakan like notices this relationship's blossoming like down in the sort of the playground in front of the apartment building, he like looks jealous and he asks her not to see him.
Yeah,
and this is what I was talking about, how the subtlety is you get the idea that maybe this is how they got together like 50 years ago. Like it was the same kind of thing. He was young and they bonded and he became this person for her, and like now he's jealous because he's old, he can't do it anymore, but he cares about her so much. Like he's under this vampire trance, as it were, that when he realizes he's about to be caught, he doesn't want it to lead back to her. People know that he lives with her and they've seen him in the building, so he pours the acid on his face. It's a really dark, like sinister scene, but you get this devotion. But like he's so devout to her that he like, she's still hungry because he never came back with that blood, obviously, from that kill. That he lets her bite him. This is after she's climbed up the side of the hospital. It looks pretty cool and badass. And she bites him and he dies and he falls out the window, and which, by the way, like that shot of him falling to the bottom and like hitting off the, you know, the entranceway has got like a little roof on it,
like awning thing.
Yeah, and he hits that and bounces off of it onto the ground. It looks legitimately good and disturbing. And really, really cool stuff. But so that's how devout he is. So the idea that they have this connection as well, and now he's jealous, and now Oscar's becoming that. But that's where the sort of the darkness comes to this story, because you realize she's kind of seducing him into being this killer for her for the rest of his life, and that's where the sort of the true horror element of the story is, when you realize he's become this, because obviously the story ends with him going with her. But at the same time, I can't help but watch this and find it really a sweet story where at the end, when he's in trouble, when the bully and his big brother are like threatening his life, I'm like, oh, I hope she shows up and saves him. I hope she shows up.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
and the, I mean, I don't know if we want to jump right into the ending right now, but that scene
we'll bounce around, go for it.
That scene is just so well done, because there is like very legitimate tension there when the bully's big brother is like holding you know, his head underwater, and just again, like I feel like in most American movies there would be some type of like, you know, oh, like let's cut to her sneaking in or something, but just the like kind of restraint they show where, you know, you just see some stuff kind of happening in the water, and then you see like the feet going in and being dragged across. It just looks so cool, and it's one of those things where like I thought it was legitimately shocking like the first time I saw it, but then as I was rewatching, I was like, yeah, I mean, I know it's gonna happen, maybe it might not be as effective or something, but I was still like so enthralled by it.
It's because you stay with him, you stay with Oscar under the water the whole time, and like you say, you just see the small parts of things happen, and then eventually the hand that was holding him just sort of drifts down through the water and he gets pulled up. and you see like just like some of these kids are just mutilated around.
Yeah.
But you don't even feel bad for them. You're totally on their side. It does this wonderful thing where it puts you in the viewpoint of these misfits, where you're sympathizing with them. You're on their side. You don't want her to be caught, even though you see the effects of her killing people. You see, I think his name is Eric, the main neighbor, who loses his friend. The first person she kills is his best friend, and then later on she tries to kill his like girlfriend, and she doesn't finish the job, so she becomes a vampire, which leads to her like wanting to commit suicide because she doesn't want to be this way. And she like gets the doctor to open the blinds during the day, and she just bursts into flames, which it makes Eric come hunting, and he sort of puts two and two together. He realizes, oh wait a minute, that kid just moved in with that guy who's went missing or whatever, and he goes in and she's in the bathroom, and Oscar is potentially going to stab him, but he screams out when he tries to like open the window for the light to get in. And she kills him, but you are so on their side at that point in the movie. You're wanting her to wake up. You're wanting her to survive.
Yeah. That was that was really cool.
Yeah, and it specifically pushing the perspective of Oscar, who because he cares about her, we care about her, and that's what we want. We want this to have a happy ending for them, even if that is dark, and even if that does mean screw the rest of the world, but. That's kind of the misfit mentality, where you feel like you're alone and you feel like screw the world. Like it is just about me and the one or two people I care about, kind of thing.
Certainly.
So, and I think one of the things that the movie does really well is everything's very balanced in the way that it kind of knocks onto the effect, because the effect that the characters have on each other is she builds up Oscar's confidence. I mean, that's why the bully's big brother even comes into it, is because Oscar eventually stands up for himself and hits back, and he hits the bully in the ear, and it makes him deaf in that ear because he hits him so hard.
Yeah.
But it escalates because of this, and he's so proud of himself that he goes back, because he finds out she's a vampire. He discovers this through the drinking of blood, which, by the way, that's not ignore the whole like the changing of the actor when she's doing something kind of. Like when she's revealing her vampire self, there's like an older actor playing her.
Oh, like what, when she's like all like bloody?
Yeah, it's when she's like, on the group. It's when he wants to make the blood pact and he cuts his hand.
Oh right, yeah.
And the blood goes on the floor, and she goes down to the floor, and when she looks up, it's not her. It's not the same actress. It's like an older actress.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Yeah, might even be a guy actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, because obviously one of the little tidbits in the movie is that she might not have been a girl when she started, because she keeps saying to him that she's not a girl, and you think, oh, she means she's a vampire. She's a however old vampire. But obviously there's that shot, which was not in the American remake, and I'm not surprised it wasn't, when he like sneaks a peek when she's getting changed, and he sees her crotch, and it looks like it's like a scar. It's not what you'd expect. It's a scar, and as if something's been cut off, and it maybe implies that she changed her gender to because it was maybe easier to attract.
Yeah. So when I was looking at the Wikipedia about the novel, they went into a little more detail about that. I guess in the book it mentions that, I think it said like 200 years ago was when she became a vampire, but it says that she was a boy who got castrated and then became a vampire.
All right.
If I'm remembering the Wikipedia correctly. And then I think it might have just said that she just preferred to be a girl at that point or something. I could be misremembering it, but I think it was something along those lines.
I think it works in a number of ways. Like you can sort of, the idea if she wants someone to go out and kill people for her, I mean, it maybe makes it easier if that's a guy.
Yeah.
So attracting a guy makes more sense, even though obviously Oscar's a little guy just now. He won't always be. He's going to grow up. He's going to be strong and whatnot. So.
Yeah. I also kind of like one of the ways I first interpreted it, as I saw it, is just being like, like I'm a vampire. I'm not like a boy or a girl. Like I'm this weird other thing that maybe I don't know if you necessarily want to be like involved with, which I think is also kind of like an interesting idea. Yeah.
But going back to like how sweet everything is, because there's that. And Oscar is a little bit of a douchebag at times where he kind of challenges. She'll say she can't do something because she's a vampire, and he'll challenge it, and it all kind of culminates when she comes to his door, and she's happy to see him. He seems to have kind of accepted that she's a vampire, because when he comes back from his dad, it's like he kind of like leaves scared of her when he goes to see his dad the second time, and then he gets ignored, and he kind of realizes that she's there for him. She's someone who, despite whatever she is doesn't ignore him. She gives him his attention and so on. He comes back, and that's when she comes to the door after this, a bit later, and she's like, you have to invite me in, and she's happy to see him. She's smiling, which is not necessarily out of character for her, but she certainly hasn't smiled immediately that way. Like, she actually, because he opens the door and she's already smiling, like she's even building a feeling, because I don't think it's as one-sided as the whole, like, classic vampire hypnotic thing. Like, I feel like she does actually care about him.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I definitely get that sense as well. But he tests this. He's like, oh, what happens if you don't come in? Is it like a visible wall or whatever? And she steps in to show him, and she starts just bleeding from like everywhere. And then he like gets scared and says, it's okay, you can come in.
This was like one of the only times I really got mad at Oscar, because it'd be one thing if he was kind of questioning it, like, oh, what would happen, but he has to like do like the come here, like she's like a dog or something. Which I thought was kind of douchey, but I do like that they play with some of these vampire tropes, but again, it's not like, it doesn't feel like there's a big like magical wall that she can't escape to, or that she walks in there and like turns to dust or something. I like that it's like, well, no, I mean, I'll still do it, but look, there will be this reaction.
It's because earlier on in the movie, he buys her some like chocolate or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, I can't eat that." It's like, "Oh, I'll try one bit," and we see her throwing up like right after. She goes and vomits, and he apologizes. But I'm like, that should have told her, because even though he doesn't know she's a vampire at that point, he should think back to that and go, "Oh, right, okay, clearly doing something that she's not meant to do as a vampire is going to hurt her in some way." But obviously he learns that, but he does feel douchebaggery for just one thing. Joe I liked as well that the first time they kiss, she kisses him, is when she's just fed.
She has,
she's just fed on the guy, and she's in for a kiss, and then Oscar's got blood in his lips. Like, oh, this is the time you give him a kiss? It's like after the blood. It's really fun, because obviously when they're starting to bond a little bit earlier in the movie, and she like, it's after she's been out and she's went, I think it's after the hospital scene, she comes back to his, and she comes in his window, and she strips down and gets in bed with him, and it's oddly very sweet, despite the fact that you think this is like kind of inappropriate because they're 12 or whatever. And he's like, oh, do you want to go steady? And she's like, can't we just keep things the way they are? And I thought, look, you just get into his bed naked. I think he's entitled to think you're maybe sending him signals here. Like, that's just me cynical thinking about it. And then she's like, oh, wait, do we have to do anything different if we're steady? And he's like, no, not really. Like, just things just pretty much stay the same. And she's like, okay, we can go steady then. But there's this sweetness to it where you can tell like neither of them really understand what that means, and neither of them really understands a lot of this stuff. And maybe she does. Maybe she's playing dumb or whatever, because I mean, after all, she is probably hundreds of years old at this point. Cause that's the other thing, is when they go into the when he goes into her house for the first time, and he sees like the jewels and the stuff, and it's like it's just implying that she's been around a long time and she's had this stuff from a long time ago. That was one of the other things that I thought they made super like unsubtle in the first one, in the American remake rather, is like in the American one, like he finds like the photo booth pictures.
Oh, okay.
And it was
familiar.
like, and it's like it was her with a young boy who it's implied that that's the old guy that's currently in the movie.
Okay.
And it was like just making it really obvious, just beating it over the head that this is. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't want to like shit in that movie that much, because it's actually a pretty good movie. Yeah. Especially because I had that whole car scene, which was quite good in it, which wasn't in this one.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back and watch the remake now, because I really don't remember much about it. Like, I do remember watching it and being like, oh yeah, that wasn't bad, but definitely I feel like out of context that would be a really surprising, great movie. But when you have the context of it's good, but not as good as this original.
Yeah, some people prefer it, and that's fine. Like if that's all up to you, of course. But Tim sounds disgusted. Like, okay,
if that's your thing,
okay, weirdo. Because I think the stuff that standed out from the remake that was good was the car scene was really good, because that was there instead of the whole like the acid scene. I'm pretty sure that replaced that, and it was this one shot from when he's hiding in the car in the back seat, and that was pretty good. And also the person investigating it's actually a cop. It's like a cop character in the American one, which wasn't in this at all. For me, I think it's a really pretty movie. I like how it's shot. Again, it uses it's like the snowy like town is almost a character in of itself, or at least the apartment building. Like I feel like I really get to know that area, and
it feels so like bleak and lonely.
Yeah,
like it definitely adds to the atmosphere of just being, I guess, kind of isolated and by yourself and alone.
Yeah, because every time we see him out there until Eli shows up, he's just on his own. Like he's just outside, and you really get into that mental space. And actually, we talk about some of the bullies and like just the shit they pull. Not only they do the usual thing where they hit him and call him names and whatever, but they put his trousers in like the urinal.
Yeah,
and I'm going to assume they pissed on them. Because why wouldn't they? And he ends up having to walk home in his gym shorts in the snow.
Which is like that must be so cold. I mean, I don't know, maybe if they're a little more used to the weather, maybe it's not as like crazy, but just watching, I'm like, oh, it's got to be freezing.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with Eli, because Eli's never really that bundled up, because she's meant to be like immune to it.
It doesn't bother her.
But all I can think of is on set, oh man, like, I mean, maybe they were on a soundstage from some of it, so it was actually heated. But then again, they need the breath, so they have to cool things down, so that Oscar's breath specifically is always breathing. But I've said that before, but I'm going to say it again. It's incredibly sweet. Despite the fact that it's about killing people, and despite the fact that what she makes Oscar become, kind of at the end, is kind of horrific in a weird way. It doesn't change the fact that the whole movie you're kind of in that mindset where you're rooting for them and you want them to like find each other, and like, because Oscar's life is so miserable that, and I guess maybe that's the real genius of the movie, is that because it puts you in his shoes, because you feel isolated like he does, because you feel his loneliness, you feel his like the world doesn't understand him, that when someone does come along and does understand them and does treat him the way she does, you kind of like, you're like, yeah, give me that happy ending for him, even if it isn't the happy ending that the rest of the world's going to see.
Well, I think that's true, but then at the same time, it never loses the horror. Like, it never feels like, oh, this is a love story with some horror elements in it.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
it's still full proper, horror. Like, and I feel like we even glossed over like some of the really horrific scenes. Like that tunnel scene is just so well done and looks so great when she just like again, it's kind of from a little far away, so it gives you that kind of perspective of like, this is just something that's happening
all in one shot as well, might I add. There's no cuts, it's just this one wide shot of the whole thing going down. And they're in the tunnel, so it's kind of silhouette-esque, and you just see him struggling. It's just really good stuff. If I have any complaints, actually, the only scene that I kind of didn't like and thought was a bit silly was when the woman's becoming a vampire and she goes by the neighbour who has all the cats, and the cats all jump on her. That was kind of goofy.
I 100% forgot about that scene. It is kind of strange. Yeah, it feels a little out of place. Like, I guess it doesn't really bother me that much, but it is.
It's just everything else felt so subtle and grounded and felt so well thought out, and then that just feels like this goofy movie scene where there's cats jumping on a woman.
Also, it's like a strange thing where, I don't know, is that part of vampire lore? Do cats like hate them or something?
I think they're just, typically they do this with dogs in movies, but I think they're just going with the idea that the cat can sense that it's not a human being and is therefore reacting to it.
Which it would be totally fine if it was just like one cat hissing at her or swiping at her or something, but it's like she has like a coat of cats that just like jump on her.
Yeah. But I mean, again, going back to the characterization of this stuff, you can sort of going back to the idea that that this old guy was Oscar once upon a time. The fact that he's in the bar and like the neighbors and all that all like invite him over to come and hang out and have fun, and he's like, "No, I've got to be." He's a loner. He's awkward. You can tell that he's basically the same type of person who doesn't like everyone else. Maybe justifiably, maybe not. Like depending on what life was like back when he was growing up. But you really get this sense.
I forget when I did. Well, we both did top 100 lists last October, and I forget where I put it on this, but I mean, this is easily like top 10 for me. Like
it may be for me. I'd have to go back and check what else would be fighting for those spots, but it's up there.
I forget where it ended up, but like after like rewatching it, it's and I mean, you tend to like stuff that you've seen more recently, but it really is fantastic.
Yeah, I think a couple of points I'd like to mention. Obviously, the acting from the two leads, the kids, is fantastic. Exceptional. Really, really great stuff. I like the music, and this kind of adds into this because the music never goes on full horror. The music actually kind of assists the love angle a little bit more. It's more sweet. It is more kind of hopeful. In fact, one of my favorite shots, and then the music gets sweet at the same time, is when there's a shot of like, because they're next door neighbors in this apartment building, and you see like Eli at the window, and you see their window, but she's not there. But there's like a pipe, one of the drain pipes going right up the middle of the screen, so it's kind of like 50-50.
Yeah,
it's just this perfect thing where they're two sides, and even that whole thing where he learns Morse code and teaches her Morse code, so they can communicate through the wall. Which is why I think she also cares for him, because she looks genuinely excited when she goes up to like use the Morse code on the wall.
Yeah.
And she does boss the other guy around, admittedly, so you can tell maybe there's a honeymoon phase maybe where it does go down, but you kind of get the sense that Oscar does need this purpose in his life. He needs this attachment that he didn't have before, even if it does result in the death of people. But maybe that's the beauty of it. It puts you in the mind of someone who could turn into a killer, but it lets you look at it sympathetically and see why they are this way. What has society around them done to them that's maybe contributed to this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, sometimes people are just crazy, and that's fine too. Like, that's a reason. But no, that's kind of where I fall. That's Let the Right One In. Fantastic film. Love it. Love it. Tim, ratings. What would you rate Let the Right One In out of 10?
I was thinking about it, and obviously love it. And I really, after rewatching it, it held up. I was never bored. Even knowing what was gonna happen, I still got really excited. I think I got to give this a 10 out of 10. I think it's fantastic.
Straight in there with a 10. I gave it a 9 when it first came out, because I am the sado. I mean, Oscar keeps his newspaper clippings of serial killers. I keep my records of what I rate movies and that kind of thing. So, but I give it a 9, and it held up so well on this viewing, and I just that I'm bumping it to a 9.5. I'm not going straight to the 10. I'm going to let it. The fact that it's held up so well, like 8-9 years later, is great. It is fantastic. I'm going to let it lie though before I go up that final bit to give it the 10.
The 10 is a very it's a very prestigious club. I think we've only given it for a few movies. I think maybe there's I think I've given it a few more 10s, because I think I might have had, this is probably my third, maybe fourth.
Basically, you're a 10 slot, is what you're saying. You just hand them out like it's nothing.
Well, it's I do have my own little bit of criteria, and one of the things about it is, really when I go back and think about it, is there anything I can really point to that's wrong with it? And I honestly, I can't think of anything. Yeah, that one cat scene is kind of weird. I'll give you that, but honestly, like, it doesn't really detract much, and there isn't much I can think about it. I almost want to watch it again, even though I just watched it, a few days earlier, because I was so still like excited and into it.
Yeah, it's one of those great movies where you have a high after watching it because it's so quite damn good.
Exactly.
So no,
and like we've mentioned a million times already, though, it might also help that the crop of movies we've watched this year so far have not been the best, shall we say?
No, I don't think there's any qualifiers. I think it's just a great movie. I think there's very little to say against it. It's expertly crafted, very well directed, excellently acted, music's great, the core story's great, everything's based about character and character motivation and character needs, and that's rare for a horror movie, because typically a horror movie is about characters being killed off one by one for some reason or another, and that's, it's about the scare of the kill coming. This is about the horrors of feeling alone and the horrors of what you do to not feel alone, and it's a much deeper horror film as a result. So that may probably sound quite snobby, but you know what? I'm sticking by it. So that has been Let the Right One In. So that wraps us up then for this movie. So we had a good movie, and this was a bonus episode. And by that, all I really mean is it means you're not waiting another week till you get the next one. The next one will be pretty soon. So yeah, let us know what you thought of Let the Right One In the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, that helps us out. Of course, you can help us out one step more by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and see how you can support us over there. There are some perks, of course. One of the perks is that you get to vote if you're in the $5 tier or up on a movie once a month for a streams episode. We went into more depth last time, but I'll just quickly run down the options. The vote's still up. You'll still be able to vote on it until the 28th of May, and then the episode will be done sometime early June. But the options are, it's Lucio Fulci month, and we've got City of the Living Dead, we've got Zombie 2, we've got The Beyond, and we have Don't Torture a Duckling. So head over and vote if you're on Patreon. It's really easy to find if you just click on the Patrons Vote tab on the left-hand side. It'll be one of the top 3 results, because there'll only ever be 3 things to vote for. But of course there's other perks, there's other things to check out, so have a look over there if you want to. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to help on Patreon, you can simply help us by liking, subscribing, all that kind of thing. All of it helps. So thank you very much for watching. Keep watching scary movies. We will see you next time.